Hey guys, it's Wednesday, and that means it's Top 5 Wednesday, and today I'm going to be filming a video on my top 5 favorite required reads. So Top 5 Wednesday was created by Lainey over on Ginger Reads Lainey, and I will link her channel down below as well as the Goodreads group so you guys can check it out and participate if you'd like to. So I'm super excited about this topic because when I was younger, I really hated required reading in school, but as I got into later in middle school and later in high school, I ended up absolutely loving a lot of the books that I was required to read for class. And today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favorite books I was required to read for school. Now, a lot of these books I don't actually have physical copies of because I had to get a copy from the school that I borrowed from the library, and I never purchased a copy for myself, so I'm not going to have physical copies of 3 of them, but I will have physical copies of 2 of them. So coming in at number 5 on my list is Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. Now, I actually read this book, I think, when I was in 5th grade, and it is a Holocaust story, so it is quite sad, but it follows a Jewish girl during the time of the Holocaust, and I don't really want to say too much about it because it's just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful book, and even though I was only 10 years old when I read it, it's still fabulous, and I feel like it is very much underrated. I feel like everyone talks about The Giver, which I've also read and really did love, but I really liked Number the Stars. I thought it was amazing, and that book has still stuck with me to this day, even though that was like 8 or 9 years ago, and it's a beautiful book. So coming in at number 4 on my list is Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Now, I've read a lot of Shakespeare throughout high school, and I absolutely adore Shakespeare, and Twelfth Night is definitely one of my favorites, and so is Midsummer's Night Dream and Macbeth. I love them all, but I read Hamlet just this year, and I absolutely loved it. I had to read it for my lit class in my senior year, and it was just wonderful. We analyzed so much of it, but that honestly made it so much better, and I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the story, and I can't say too much about it because saying anything about Hamlet pretty much gives the entire story and the ending away, but I will say that it is a tragedy, and it's beautiful. I adore it. I think it's great. So many of the characters are hilarious, so many of them are so complex, and it's beautiful. Definitely my favorite Shakespeare that I've read. Number 3 on my list has to go to The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, I don't have a copy of this book, and I really, really wish I did, and I'm planning on buying one because I adore this book. It is so, so great. I don't have a copy of the book, but I do have a book bag with the cover on it, and the back is like the fireworks over the cityscape. Yeah, so my friend brought this back for me from New York, and I love it. I'm planning on using it for school. I read The Great Gatsby actually in my sophomore year of high school before it was required reading, and then we had to read it again in my junior year of high school as required reading. So that was the second time I had read it, but I loved it even more the second time. It is just such a beautiful book. Quite honestly, I am not the biggest fan of Fitzgerald's writing, only because it is so flowery, and that's not very much my type, as you'll see from my top book in this video. But yes, I really do love the story. I love the commentary that it makes. I love the moral. I love the characters. I love to hate the characters. I don't really love any of the characters, to be quite honest. I think it's just an incredible story. I think that Fitzgerald does a wonderful job of making a commentary on the 20s, and of course I love the time period, and that's just probably one of my favorite time periods to read from is the 20s and Lost Generation. Even though Fitzgerald is not exactly Lost Generation, I do really enjoy that era of literature. So it's gotta be my number 3. Number 2 on my list is actually also one of my favorite books of all time, and it is also one of the books that I read just this past year in my lit class, and that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. It is so absolutely fantastic, and I had to go out and buy the prettiest copy of this book that I could find because I loved it so much after I first read it, and I adore the copy that I have. It's beautiful, and I love it, and I've already read this book twice. It's so good. And this book also has characters that I love to hate. So many of the characters are so crazy, and they do so many irrational, unbelievable things, and you can't exactly excuse any of the things that they do because they're pretty inexcusable, but it's just a wonderful, wonderful story, and I love it so, so much. And I plan on picking up Jane Eyre very soon by Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte's sister, because I need more of the Bronte sisters. I'm so sad that this is her only published book. I need more. Also, for those of you who have read this book and have yet to watch Kate Bush's music video for Wuthering Heights, I highly recommend that you go watch it now, because it's an experience. I'll link it down below. And finally, number 1 on my list of top 5 favorite required reads has to be The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I cannot say enough about this book. I read this book just this year for my AP Lit class, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I already loved Hemingway before I read this book because I'd read several of his short stories and I adored those. And then finally this year I got to read one of his novels, and this was the one that I read. And I'm also currently reading A Farewell to Arms, but I absolutely adore Hemingway's writing. I love it, and I love this story. This is one of those books that I read at the right time in my life, so it also had a bigger impact on me in that way. I could honestly do an entire video on this book and how much I love it, and go into detail about every little metaphor and symbol and all the subtext, but I'm not going to do that now because this video would be way too long. But I'm just going to tell you that I absolutely adore it, and I highly recommend that you read it if you like Hemingway, because if you do, you will not be disappointed. Honestly, it's so, so good, and I cannot wait until I read more of his books. I love it. I love it so, so much. Hemingway isn't for everyone, so take this with a grain of salt. I would recommend reading some of his short stories and seeing if you like those first before reading one of his novels, because that is what I did, and I think it worked very well for me, because I think if I had just jumped into one of his novels, I may not have liked it as much. And if you are going to start with one of his short stories, I highly recommend A Well-Lighted Place and Hills Like White Elephants, because those are 2 of my favorites, especially Hills Like White Elephants. So if you want to get into reading some Hemingway, I highly recommend you go and read one of those short stories first, and then get into his books, because I promise you, if you like his writing, if you like his style, you will love this book. So good. So that's it, guys. Those were my top 5 favorite required reads. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite required reads were, and if you have read any of the books that I've mentioned, if you were required to read any of the books that I've mentioned, let me know about your thoughts on them, because I'm very interested to know. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. That they were having what they called a brown paper bag sale, so anything that you could fit from outside of the store into a brown paper bag you could buy for $2. So that's what we did.